Welcome, everyone, to the Pint and Click podcast. My name is Caleb.
And my name is Greg.
We're going to talk to you about your favorite video games. So grab a pint of your favorite drink, find a nice, comfy chair, and have yourself a sweet roll. And we'll dive into that.
Sweet roll.
A sweet roll. Somebody steal it?
Hopefully.
Nice.
That's the one they taste the best.
Sweet.
Yeah. Caleb, I'm looking you dead in the eyes right now.
It's weird.
We're in person.
It's not good.
It's extremely good. It's extremely good.
I'm going to have to put a curtain up in my living room that I can just pull between us.
We've done the remote podcast too many times. We can't do it in person.
Yeah.
So, Caleb, how's your week been?
It's been a long, busy week.
It's
been a long, busy week. How's your week been, Greg?
Pretty good. I've made the voyage up to your neck of the woods, my old stomping grounds.
Yeah.
And we're here to do the 8th edition, the week before the 2-month anniversary of the podcast here in person.
2 months.
2 months.
What a ride.
What a ride. What a journey.
What a journey indeed, Greg.
Yeah.
It's been a time.
It's been a time. Without any further ado, I'm gonna take lead this week.
You go for it.
First game, or the first topic I'm bringing to you is here's the thing. I didn't play a lot of games this week. I've been in a little bit of a rut, as they say.
Oh, yeah. It happens.
So I dug into my GG account, where I used to track my video games, and pulled a game from yesteryear. Last year, I bought this game on the Switch store for a very good sale price. And that game is Far Lone Sales. I got it for very, very cheap.
That name sounds familiar, but I can't picture what the game is.
It's a good game. It downloaded to my Switch. I booted it up and didn't put it down for the 2.5 hours until I reached the end of the game. That's how good of a game it is.
Wow.
So Far Lone Sales is a vehicle management adventure game. You come upon this it's like a car-like ship. It's this big ship that rolls on wheels, and basically what you have to do is manage the throttle and all the different controls that make it move, make it roll forward, if you will. Caleb, I've just sent you a picture of the ship for you to get an idea of what this looks like.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And you're really just this little red guy running around trying to, in the back of the ship, you have to pop the fuel up in to fuel the ship, and then you gotta press the speed button and let off the steam, and then make sure that you don't run out of fuel in there on the road you kind of scroll from left to right to get to the next part of the game. And as you are rolling, sometimes you'll see little cans of fuel or little boxes of fuel, and it'll light up, or you'll stop your ship and then go and pick those up, and you have more fuel. The mechanics start off kind of manageable. It's just these couple of little things, and then over time, the developers who are Okomotive, I struggle looking at that word every time because it's spelled a little bit like locomotive, but not really. So I want to pronounce it differently. They just keep tacking on one more thing that you have to manage. Like there's a sail that gets added onto your ship, and fire. Like parts of your ship will catch fire, and you have to use a water hose to put it out. So slowly over time, they keep adding these mechanics, and that kind of keeps adding a little bit of difficulty. But by the time that they've introduced it, you're already used to managing the old layout, the old controls. So you have this one new thing, and it feels like you're managing it, and you can keep going. And it's a really interesting game because it doesn't get frustrating adding on all these controls like you think it might. It stays manageable, and it continues to be a good time right through the end. And it's a nice short 2.5 hour game, so you don't ever really get to a point of feeling like it's frustrating.
Yeah, I saw this game making its rounds on YouTube. Now that I've seen the cover of the game, I definitely remember seeing it making its rounds on YouTube for a while. I never knew what the game was, and now that you've explained it to me, it actually reminds me of a game called We Must Go Deeper. Have you heard of that?
The name is familiar, but I don't think I've ever played it.
It's a survival game, kind of, in a way. You and a bunch of other players get in a submarine, and then the goal is to go as deep as you can before you die, and like you're constantly managing leaks that can happen in your submarine and things like that. And in another way, it also kind of reminds me of Sea of Thieves.
Yep.
Just like the fact that you have to, maintain a ship and,
Mm-hmm.
You have the sails and things to take care of. But, yeah, no, that sounds super interesting. I'll be adding that to my list, I think.
Yeah, and the thing about this game is it has a sequel also called Far Changing Tides. And I think they're both only $20 games full price.
Oh, wow.
But they're very frequently on sale for under $6. Like, I think even at this point last year, I got loan sales for like $2.99.
That's awesome.
So if you keep an eye out, probably within 2 months they'll have another sale for this game, and it's worth picking up for sure at the sale price that it goes for. The world's really kind of stylized beautifully. The sound design and the music really matches the like lonely environment in that game.
Yeah.
It also kind of accompanies you in a way that is keeps it being kind of cozy. The story is told exclusively through the gameplay and like just the world around you. It kind of feels post-apocalyptic and kind of like something happened, and then this is like you kind of roaming around after whatever happened. But the story at the same time leaves a lot of room for interpretation, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, that sounds it.
I played it on the Steam Deck yesterday just to try and kind of refresh myself. I originally played it on the Switch, as I said. And it was interesting because the Steam Deck version had a few like really pixelated textures on the inside of the ship. Like it looked way worse than the Switch version, and for like the Steam Deck version you wouldn't expect that.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it was something, I don't know if it was, I'm not a game developer by any means, so I don't know the inside baseball of it all, but it almost seemed like something didn't transfer well to the Switch version of the game, or the Steam version of the game, rather. So on the Steam Deck, it just looks really kind of crinkly in some places.
Huh.
But I was worried going back to it that playing it again would make me kind of realize that the game wasn't quite as good as I remembered it from when I played it last year.
Yep.
So I was pretty happy when I got into it. I was like just off to the races, just picked it right back up and loved it again. It's a really fun little game for what it is.
Yeah.
And I think I'll probably be giving Changing Tides another chance because I picked it up shortly after it came out last year and wasn't able to get into it in the same way. But this kind of inspired me to give it another shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that with a lot of games like this, well, honestly, just a lot of games that have sequels in general, I find that, like, when I beat one, I need space before I can start the next one. I have a really hard time going from one game to its sequel, because usually it's more of the same that you've been doing in the past game. And not necessarily like that's a bad thing, but it's just, I need time to play other things and get my interests, locked on something else.
For sure. And that's the interesting thing, was I found this game because it was on sale only a couple months before the Changing Tides came out. So I think you're exactly right. Like when that game came out, I just hadn't had enough time off from loan sales. I was just like, And I think it takes it to from what I remember playing of Changing Tides, I think it takes the management style and tries to do a lot of it the same, but a little more complex with a different ship. And I think the different ship was kind of what deterred me from that game.
Yeah, I have a problem with management games. I love the game Papers, Please. It's a super fun game. I loved playing it, but man, it just gets to a point where you have to look out for so much, and like it's management in a different way, but it's still the fact that you have all this tedious work you have to do, and it just becomes too much at some point.
But I think that's also a good comparison in that, like, I agree completely. I probably can only get about half an hour, 45 minutes into Papers, Please before I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah,
I'm done with this. And I think Far Loan Sales really helps itself in being only a 2.5 hour experience. And I think the management does a nice job of walking that line really well, of being like almost too much to handle, but also still keeping you feeling like you are in control. And there are points in that game where like you run into roadblocks in the road, and you have to get out of the ship and do a certain type of puzzle to either drop the roadblock or add something onto your ship. So it varies the gameplay a little bit and gives you little breaks from the management kind of side and the juggling work of managing the ship. So you're instead then going to do that and break it up and then move back into your management stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think, like I said, these games go on sale for very, very discounted prices, very reasonable prices. And I would definitely recommend Far Lone Sales for a game that people should try and just experience it, because it's a really nice little indie game. But Caleb, how about topic number one?
I'll tell you about my topic number one, but I just want to point out we're doing this little live session here in person, and it's funny that I can tell that both of us were musicians because both of our cables have colored tape labeling that there are respective bands' cables. Oh, yeah. It's great.
Hey, we keep it no, old habits die hard is what I was going for there, but
keep habits hard, you know?
Keep habits hard. My idioms got mixed up in the brain.
Yeah. So I'm coming here with a little bit of a Telltale Games bonanza for you. It's funny, I do this every single episode. I talk about something that I hate doing, and it always happens to be the week where I've done that thing anyways. And I just talked about how I don't really tend to move from a sequel of a game to another sequel or something super like it. And that's exactly what I did this week. So, the game I played was The Wolf Among Us. And that's a Telltale game. It's kind of like a you could call those, I guess, point and clicks, really. It's like a combination of a point and click game and along the lines of more of like a movie game, I guess, like a choice based.
Yeah. Choice based is good too.
Yeah. I played The Wolf Among Us, and it's important to know I've seen this game before. I watched somebody play it however long ago. It seemed really cool and I really liked it, but there was something about it that always kind of seemed like maybe this game isn't one I'd actually want to play. And then a while ago, I'm still waiting for the new Jedi Survivor game to come out. So while waiting, I've been looking for something to just kind of hold me over, and I came across that game in the store for pretty cheap and decided why not pick it up, give it a try. And I beat it within, at least within 2 or 3 days. I beat it really fast for a Telltale game. For me, at least, beating a Telltale game. I usually those games kind of drag for me, and I feel like there's always a day where I won't play an episode, and then because I didn't play one day, I'll just kind of fall out of it, and I'll never finish it. But nope, The Wolf Among Us was super interesting to me, and it kept me hooked for the whole thing. I really liked it. So the game's all about these fairy tale characters coming together as in a community based in New York. It's all of these fairy tale characters that have lived centuries past their once told fairy tales, and now they're living in modern New York, and they're in this secret community that's being shielded by magic. So they call them Mundies, but it's just normal humans. They shield it with magic so that these Mundies can't see the fables. They can't see these fable characters and see, into this town of fucking frogs walking on 2 feet and shit. So, it's a really great game. You play as the big bad wolf, and you are a detective almost. You're the sheriff of the town. But your role is less of a law enforcement badass and more of just kind of a detective. The whole game is you doing a lot of detective work, and it's super fun. You work a lot with Snow White. There's all kinds of characters. Ichabod Crane is the mayor at that point, and it's insane. And that's something that I never thought I could get into. I've never been one for fairy tales or anything, and I've always thought that like the more like gruesome tellings of fairy tales were interesting, but still not my cup of tea, really. So getting into this game was kind of a surprise for myself, but nope, I've really liked it. You investigate a murder case, and it's it takes a whole bunch of turns. I mean, it's already pretty fucking wacky with it being a bunch of, fairy tale characters all coming together.
Yeah.
But if you can get past the initial wackiness shock factor, it's a really good game. And that's the only hard part that I felt at first was kind of just I had to nudge myself to play it because fairy tales just weren't really my thing. And so I just had a hard time getting into it. I didn't really know a lot of the characters. But it was really cool. And in classic Telltale fashion, as you play and you meet these characters, you unlock these little index pages about the characters. And so it tells you a little bit about their fairy tales and stuff. And it was interesting to see new fairy tales and stuff that I've never seen before.
That's interesting. I always think it's cool when games can bring a genre like fairy tales to the table that hasn't been previously. Like fantasy is a very common theme in video games.
Oh yeah,
and war games are another common thing. But something like fairy tales isn't usually super deeply explored in the video game world. So to have a game like this do it and do it well is pretty cool. I think it's kind of cool when they can find something from kind of classic literature to adapt into a game and do it well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Telltale games are, they're known for being games. I don't know if I can say they're entirely based off of comic books because I don't think all of them are, but that is a big thing with Telltale Games. They lean into the comic book style of things.
Yeah, because like Walking Dead was a comic book before it was.
Right.
I know that one of the early games they made was based off of the Bone graphic novel series.
Oh, really? Yeah. I just learned that The Wolf Among Us was actually based off of comic books.
So yeah, it seems like that's really Telltale's thing. I didn't know that about them. I mean, but that's cool. Makes sense.
Yeah. The comic book The Wolf Among Us is based on, I believe it's just called Fables. But it's a comic book series. They made The Wolf Among Us as kind of a prequel to the comic books, which is really interesting. From what I've heard, I have not read the comic books. I can't for sure say that. But they are on my list to read. I've gotten a little bit more into reading comics. I've never been into it.
It's funny that you say that because I'm also kind of getting more into reading more graphic novels and comic books because I've been going to my local library and like graphic novels are more available at that kind of place.
Yeah.
But as you were saying that's the what is it, Fables?
Yeah.
Is something that was the comic books that was like, man, maybe I'll have to check that out. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've been reading oh man, what's it called? I believe it's called The Last Ronin. Okay. And it's a Ninja Turtles comic book, comic series, I guess. I've been reading it in prep for the Ninja Turtles game that they're planning to release.
You said a couple weeks ago that you knew the comic series that it was based off, so I was wondering if that was tying in.
Yeah, I heard of the comic books, but I never read them, and then just last week I decided to finally dip my toes in and start reading them, and I was actually surprised. I've never really dipped into comics too much, but I'm really liking it. I'm 2 issues in so far. I just haven't had the time to get further than that at this point, but yeah, in those first 2 issues, I was pretty surprised. And it's a pretty gritty comic book with it's the premise, no spoilers here. It's the whole premise of the comic. The premise of the comic is that all of the turtles are dead except for one turtle. And so this mystery turtle has learned all of the weapon styles of his comrades, and now he's taking revenge on the people. And it's set a little bit in the future. and it's pretty nuts. It's pretty gruesome too. It's he's this turtle's actually like killing the foot ninjas and stuff rather than just just knocking them out or bonking them over the head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Huh. I just beat, and this is only because you mentioned Ninja Turtles, but Gabby and I just beat finally Shredder's Revenge.
You know what? I'm glad you said that because I took your advice and I tried it with Maddie and we just beat it a little bit ago.
It's so fun.
It was a really good time.
It's just a nice side-scroller beat 'em up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's I was actually surprised too. It had a lot of things that I didn't think it would. Like just I don't know, the kind of like combos almost that you can do was pretty pretty mind-blowing because the last Ninja Turtles game I played before Shredder's Revenge was whatever the old arcade game is, in the basement of a restaurant near us, and that game was fun, and maybe it's just the retro factor for me and why I liked that one so much. But I decided to try it with Maddie, and we grinded through it, and had a good time.
So, what characters were you guys?
I tried to be somebody new every time we played.
Okay.
But then it got to a point where I just started playing as the same character. Maddie was April O'Neil.
Yep.
And she stayed with April O'Neil through the whole game. I ended up playing, I think I tried everyone except for Splinter and Michelangelo. So I guess I tried two characters. Let me rephrase. Or three. Yeah. Three. Because I was Leonardo, Donatello, and then I played Raphael. And Raphael's who I ended up playing through the rest of it.
I'm trying to think. I'm bad with the names, but I'm pretty sure Gabby and I were Michelangelo and Donatello.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't remember which one was which. But yeah, those were our two characters.
Yep.
So I also want to take it back and into the comic book / graphic novel thing.
Yeah, throw it back.
It's becoming a motif of this podcast. And what got me into graphic novels and into reading more of those was the Mouse books, the two Mouse books. Do you know those at all?
No, I've never heard of those.
No, so they're just two books written by, I think his name's Art Spiegelman, and they're just comic book adaptations rather, of his dad's telling of his time trying to escape Nazi Germany.
That's really interesting.
And he draws all of the characters. Well, most of the I won't get into spoilers here. No, it's an older book series. But he draws all of the certain characters as mice, and all of a certain different type of character as cats, and so they're all like taking on different animal bodies, basically, or animal faces, heads rather.
Interesting.
And it's wild. Like it really kind of puts you in the atmosphere of this guy that was trying to outrun the Nazis and survive through that time as a Jewish man.
Yeah.
Very intense. But yeah, so and now I'm reading I just rented or borrowed the New Adventure Zone 11th Hour graphic novel. So I am excited to get started on that. It's a chonky boy.
Yeah.
It's the chonkiest of the books, I will say.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So, Greg, why don't you tell me about your second game?
Before we get into my second topic of the day, I wanted to...
throwing a surprise in there.
Yeah, this is a surprise to even me.
Oh.
Yes. As we mentioned, you and I are face-to-face.
Face-to-face?
Very, very much 1 foot between our faces.
No,
not really.
Yeah, we're touching noses right
now. But, in my travels up here, I've acquired a beverage. You have acquired a beverage. And it got me thinking as I've been sipping on this beverage right here, right now, that this would be a good time for an impromptu refreshment roundup. Time for episode 2 of the segment, or the podcast within the podcast.
This is where we play like an alarm sound effect or something. Yeah.
It's the refreshment roundup.
Classic.
The official theme song. So I've acquired myself here a little country cocktail. Jack Daniel's country cocktail. Down home punch. Man, I can't read.
Down home punch.
I'm about 4/5 of the way through this thing and I can't read it. No, down home punch. It contains alcohol. It's 4.8% in this 10 fluid ounce bottle. It's got the picture of it looks like a slice of lemon, but it's red, so maybe that's grapefruit. I can't really tell. Very much otherwise, it looks, the branding is Jack Daniel's branding. Would you agree?
I would agree. The bottle looks real cool.
Yes, it's got little neck ripples. A little kind of almost like you'd see on a Jack Daniel's whiskey bottle.
For his pleasure.
Well, okay. So, if you'll allow, since we are doing a live impromptu refreshment roundup,
yeah,
let me get a little sip.
Take a little sip. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed the audio of that sip.
That was on purpose.
I want those sloshing noises. Oh.
I'll probably cut that.
No, staying in now. Woo!
So, okay, I get a lot of citrus in that.
Okay.
A lot of citrus. Very refreshing.
Okay.
I like this beverage. It's a nice, sweet beverage. It's not something that you would take a sip of and think of Jack Daniel's at all. Because Jack Daniel's is my least favorite whiskey.
Yep.
Whenever I take a drink of Jack Daniel's, I go blech. And this does not make me want to go blech.
That's good.
So, Caleb, if you'll recall the official refreshment roundup scale,
we pair it with a game.
But I believe it's also you rated out of 100.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Give me a rating.
I think I got to give this a solid 73.
Interesting. That's a good score.
This is a good drink. I would recommend people go out and pursue this drink if you like a little sweet, citrusy, refreshing beverage.
Yeah. And we will, just to throw this out there, we will up it to a 100 if we get sponsored for this.
Oh, yeah.
If anybody wants to sponsor, we'll give your drink a preem rating.
And we will not disclose that we're sponsored.
No, definitely not. No.
So, Caleb, you are correct. After we give it a rating, we do have to pair it with a video game.
What game are you thinking? Something fruity?
Something fruity. Maybe, let me get one more little quick sip in here. All right, yep, that confirms my suspicions. If I'm going to pair this with a game, I'm going to pair it with something that's also a light, good time. And I say light in terms of gameplay, because the atmosphere of this game's a little complex, actually. I'm pairing it with Portal.
You know what?
That game seems citrusy to me.
That's fair. That's fair.
I think that's a citrusy video game that much like this drink just leaps on your taste buds. You're leaping through the portals.
You are leaping through those portals.
So thank you, Caleb, for following me through an impromptu refreshment roundup.
Thank you, Portal.
Thank you, Portal, for sponsoring this episode.
Yep.
Now, Caleb, 2023 is the year of the video game. There are almost endless releases this year.
There's a lot of good ones.
A lot of good games coming out. And in that way, I think that some have slipped through the cracks.
Really?
I think you and I have potentially not paid attention to all the good games coming out this year.
Well, I tell you what, it's a bad day to be a new game, then.
It's a bad game to be a new game.
Well,
so with that in mind, Caleb,
yeah,
I brought 5 games, a list of 5 games to you today that I think could be great that you and I are sleeping on.
Okay, hit me.
So our first game is going to be released by the time this episode comes out, actually. And it's Minecraft Legends.
Microsoft Legends?
Microsoft owns Minecraft. And they look similar as words. Minecraft Legends comes out on April 18th.
Okay. And is this a sleeper hit game? Is that what you're telling me?
I just think, maybe not in the general gaming public. I think a lot of people know about this.
Okay.
But I don't think you and I have been paying enough attention to it.
I will not pay attention to it.
Now,
but
I know you're saying that, Caleb, and you can laugh all you want. I hear you laughing. But this game could actually be great.
That's fair.
We're sleeping on it because it's a Minecraft game, so we're assuming it's going to be for kids. And I think it will be in ways.
Right.
But it's also looking like some sort of base management game combined with a real-time strategy.
Interesting.
And those types of games with the Minecraft brand and like the style and the fact that it'll probably have those controls dumbed down for kids, it has me interested because I can't normally get into like RTS games.
Yeah.
But I think if they do an RTS game with kids in mind, it might be the right complexity for me. I think it could be a great game.
Yeah. I'll definitely have to look at it. I'm used to like Age of Empires and stuff. And honestly, I think I have a hard time branching out into other RTS games nowadays, so I'll have to take a look at it, but sounds interesting.
It's a day one drop on Game Pass, so I'll let you know.
All right.
Game number 2 comes out on May 30th, and it's the System Shock remake.
Never heard of it.
So System Shock, I had my eye on this game a few years back, but ultimately I stopped paying attention to it because it was just taking so long for it to come out. System Shock was a game on the PC back like in the early 2000s, late 90s, and this remake is hoping to update it, but System Shock, the original, inspired games like BioShock and these other immersive sim games like Deus Ex and what's the not BioShock, that's the one I already said. Dishonored is the other one.
Okay. Yep.
So it has any game that has inspired BioShock is a game that I think at least has my attention. I'm interested to see if this game can bring System Shock, which is, to be fair, the originals back in the day were very highly thought of. They were a respected game series. So my hopes is that they modernize them and make them good, and maybe this game is kind of slid under our radars.
Interesting.
Yeah. This next one we talked about a little bit yesterday, and it's the reason that I started this topic, because I was like, well, maybe there's some games that we aren't really paying attention to with the Tears of the Kingdom and Starfield and all the other big games coming out this year. And it's certainly not a game that the general gaming public is sleeping on. And that is the June 22nd release of Final Fantasy 16.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So I watched the PlayStation State of Play for this game yesterday. And I think you and I are sleeping on it because we both aren't really Final Fantasy guys.
Yeah, definitely not.
And so, like, the lineage of those games makes us, like, immediately kind of think, oh, these games aren't going to be for us, and kind of turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
That's not what that saying's for, but anyway. But after seeing that State of Play, it looks like they're really committing to be an action RPG. And I'm really hoping that they can kind of take it in the direction of like The Witcher 3, Skyrim, Red Dead Redemption 2. All those kind of great giant open world games that have great combat systems.
Yep.
And I'm hopeful that game might be the first Final Fantasy game to really grab my interest.
Yeah, I'll have to try it. I'm still, because I love retro games and stuff. So the first Final Fantasy is still on my list to eventually get around to trying, but yeah, I don't think I'll make it down the entire however many game rabbit hole. So.
I'm still hopeful for either a Final Fantasy VII remake style game or like the 2D 3D kind of remasters that they've been doing.
Yep. For
Final Fantasy 6 or 3/6, whatever, the one right before 7 that was like steampunk style. That one looks really cool to me.
Yep.
So this next game, actually, I just found out about this morning, even.
Oh.
Through Polygon.com. It's called Immortals of Avium, and it releases on June 30th. This game's described as an FPS with magic.
Oh, interesting.
The gameplay trailer looks really wild. Like, the story seems a kind of generic fantasy story, but I'd be down for that. Why not? You know?
Yeah.
The dialogue of the trailer seemed a little bit Forspoken-y at times, like kind of cliche, roll your eyes kind of dialogue.
Yep.
But if this game delivers on the concept of like being able to shoot different magic spells to kill people and I don't even know if it's got a multiplayer component, but I think that'd be a cool potential thing to have. I think the concept, if they can live up to it, I think that will be a game that we've slept on big time, and might actually be a game that even the more general public has slept on.
Yeah.
I think that could be a really cool game.
Yeah. Speaking of Forspoken, I feel like I feel like I've heard so much about the rough dialogue. There must be enough dialogue that we could do a whole segment every episode where we just say a line of dialogue that's so bad. But man, and that's kind of a bummer too, because that was a game that I wasn't necessarily looking forward to, but it looked interesting to me.
It looked interesting.
I can't say for sure it was my kind of game, but yeah, it looked really interesting. And nope, the second I heard the dialogue, that's a big nope for me. I just won't be able to get into it.
Yeah. You know, a game I'm holding out for, and this is kind of taking a pause off of my list, but I'm holding out for Avowed.
I don't know if I know that one.
So I heard about it right about the same time as Forspoken, and I always kind of get the two confused for a second.
Yep.
Avowed is, I believe, supposed to come from what is the company that did Outer Worlds, and I believe Fallout New Vegas.
Oh, Obsidian?
Obsidian.
Yeah.
Avowed is going to be to put it in oversimplified terms, it's supposed to be Obsidian's Skyrim.
Yes, I'm looking at pictures now. Yep, I have seen this.
I'm really hoping that comes out and does really well.
Yeah,
I think that could be a fun time.
It looks really neat, yeah.
So, we are at our last game that I think you and I are sleeping on here.
All right.
This one doesn't have an official release date yet. They've said it's going to release this year, but we'll see if that comes to pass.
Is it Nebula Realms 2?
Oh, I wish it was.
Oh,
I wish it was.
We can only dream.
We can only dream. This game is Assassin's Creed Mirage.
Oh, yeah. That's absolutely on my wish list already.
So maybe you're not sleeping on it, but I think I might be. This is supposed to be a return to form for the Assassin's Creed games.
Yeah, which prompts the question for me. Did you ever like the original Assassin's Creed games? Because I know you haven't had a great relationship with Assassin's Creed.
Well,
but did you ever like the early ones?
That's exactly where I'm going with this. I'm hoping that they can take the refining of controls that they've done with Odyssey in these games, because those games control well compared to the older ones.
Yeah, I think for me personally, where the controls got like too clunky and messy was with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, or maybe Odyssey did it too. I don't know. Whenever they added the light and heavy attacks, that really bummed me out.
So the only thing about the early Assassin's Creed games for me was that they were built around parkour, but the traversal was ass.
Yeah, it was definitely something they were still building.
So that's what I'm saying, is if Assassin's Creed Mirage can come in and deliver a little bit better of a parkour experience, but still deliver like those classic Assassin's Creed games, I think it might be the one for me.
Well, and that's where it's hard for me to say, and like, obviously I as somebody that wasn't a fan of Valhalla or Odyssey, I didn't make it incredibly far into those games, but I did make it far enough to know that, like, those settings are so much different than the setting of, like, Mirage or any of the older games, too. Like, I'm not denying that they probably had good movement controls, but, like, I really don't feel like I can speak for the parkour controls in those games, because I just don't feel like I was doing a ton of it on, like, the traditional big city settings that you would have in the older Assassin's Creed games.
Yeah.
And I think two games stand out to me that did parkour really well for me, in my opinion. Assassin's Creed Unity had some great parkour for the time I played. And then I really liked Syndicate's parkour, and I know Syndicate had the button where you could parkour up or parkour down, and it made it so, when you run to the edge of a building, you're no longer just jumping off if you're trying to climb down, and I think that kind of stuff helped a lot. But yeah, no, this is a game that's been on my radar for a while, because I've always been a bigger fan of the traditional gameplay of Assassin's Creed, and less of a fan of the new RPG stuff they're doing. But there's even a sweet spot with me, though, where, like, they could combine the two. They could marry the two ideas. And as long as they have the traditional, old school Assassin's Creed gameplay, which I know a lot of people don't like, and with good reason. I know there's a lot of complaints about the gameplay being too easy, like how you have a counter button where if you counter, most enemies, you get an insta-kill. And, like, I know that that's pretty easy, But the other fun thing about that for myself as a fan of Assassin's Creed, it's not so much the difficulty, but like I loved the idea of playing as a master assassin, and what better way to show that this character is a master assassin than to have them perform these moves super easily on all of these really low-level soldiers, or low-ranking soldiers. You know, and then when you start dealing with some of the higher trained soldiers, or some of like the, you know, like the officers and stuff in like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, they you can't counter them immediately. If you try to counter them immediately, they fucking bitch slap you. And I loved that because it actually felt like, you know, these grunts that are supposed to be grunts, you can take no problem because you're a master assassin.
Right. But Syndicate was the London one, right?
Yes, yep.
That was the closest I got to getting. I got a decent way through that game.
Syndicate was the last Assassin's Creed game I could play with the added RPG elements that I actually liked. Right. I really enjoyed Syndicate.
Yeah. So Caleb, I've brought to you my list of 5 games. I'm hoping at least a couple of these turn out to be real good games. So I look like a smarty pants who just knows how to predict the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Greg, before I dive into my game, let me give you a game that I think is a little bit of a sleeper hit here. All right.
Lay it on me.
I just found out this releases next month in May, and I didn't even know that.
Everyone knows about Tears of the Kingdom, Caleb.
Yeah. This game is called Legend of Zelda. No. This game is, I believe, I'm going to have to look up the title because I don't want to leave anything out here. Yeah. I believe the game is just called Gollum.
Oh, I saw that. It's the new not Legend of Zelda. It's the new Legend of Zelda game. It's a combo. The new Lord of the Rings game.
Yes. Yeah. So it's I read a little bit about it on the PlayStation Store today because it wasn't on there, or it was on there for a while, but they didn't have everything finished with it on the store, at least from what I saw. Like, I don't feel like it had a good description or anything, and I don't think it had a release date on there, but I checked today, it comes out, I think, May 23rd, it follows the story of Gollum. It follows a story told by the books, I guess, of Gollum, how he, you know, made his way through Mordor and stuff, and how he dealt with these, you know, how he knew about these creatures and things before he met Frodo and Sam and guided them and stuff. And you know, the game is a mixed bag for me because I played the trailer and immediately noticed that first line delivered, immediately picked up on the fact that voice was not Andy Serkis, who played Gollum. And that's a little bit of a bummer for me, only because I'm so accustomed to the movies of all, you know, the movie versions of all of the characters that really was hoping to see Andy Serkis come back as Gollum.
And isn't he like super hardworking? So like, come on, get him. He's working.
Yeah. But the person that they got, I'm unaware of the credits right now, but the person that they got did an okay job. Gollum sounds like Gollum, you know. But anyways, I've been really looking forward to that, and I just showed up on the store today, in like the upcoming releases category, and I took a look at that, and it just sounds very interesting to me, and part of that, going back to that mixed bag part. The other thing that kind of bums me out is it looks like they almost went for more of a cartoony art style, almost. It's hard to tell because some character models looked okay and then others looked really, like, just cartoony and out there. But I think it's a game I'm probably going to pick up. I don't know. It's definitely not a game I'll pre-order. Maybe a game I might not even get full price, but it's probably a game I'll pick up eventually. But I wanted to throw that out there.
Nice. I'm glad you had a one for my bit prepared, even though I didn't tell you about it.
Yeah. No, listen, I'm stocked full of knowledge. Knowledge, Greg.
Yes.
So I'll tell you about my second game.
Please do.
I'm bringing to you, and this is why I said Telltale Bonanza. I'm bringing to you the next game I've been playing these past few days. This is The Walking Dead Season 1. the very first Walking Dead game by Telltale. I don't even know what can be said about this that people don't already know. These are fantastic games, and they're not for everybody, because they're still kind of that slow-moving movie-type game, narrative-type game and stuff, but man, they're just so fun. And The Walking Dead is such a unique universe, where I feel like there's countless stories you can tell set in this universe, because it's not like you have 30,000 mutations of zombies like in games or stories. It's one type of zombie that moves very slowly, and the thing I think is cool about that is that it doesn't have to rely on mutated zombies and mutated creatures for it to stay interesting. The slow shambling zombies, they stay very interesting because it's the kind of it's the kind of threat that almost seems not so threatening at a certain point, and then right as you get comfortable with it, it strikes again, and it's kind of that thing. I feel like that's the whole thing with the Walking Dead TV show, is that with all these episodes, all these stories that they're telling, it definitely gets to points where I feel like the zombies become less of an issue until they are an issue again, and it still manages to stay just as interesting as the first time, like, the main character, Rick, encounters a zombie. And they do it well in the games, too. You deal a lot with other survivors, and, you're managing your group and stuff like that. But at the same time, you also deal with the slow shambling dead, and yeah, it stays very interesting. It stays very fun. The story's great, and I'll admit, the first season of The Walking Dead, the first game that Telltale did of The Walking Dead, isn't my favorite in the whole series. My favorite's probably the second one. But I've been replaying these with Maddie specifically. We've been playing them together because she's never even seen them before. I've seen all of these games before and even played some of them before. But yeah, I'm diving back into it with Maddie, and that's another thing that's actually kept me so interested in it. Is it's extremely fun to see the reactions to the events that happen from somebody that's never seen them before.
Yeah,
but
these games were big YouTube bait back in the day, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching so many people play these games.
Oh, yeah. That's where I first learned about it. Way back when, watching the Rad Brad play The Walking Dead.
Oh, my God. I haven't thought of that name in so long.
The Rad Brad. That's a shout-out.
Yes.
Get him on the cast.
Get him on this podcast, please.
Nice.
I would love that.
Yeah.
He was the guy, he wasn't my, I want to go watch a funny person do Let's Plays.
No?
He was my, if I know that I want to look at a game before playing it, I'd be like, all right, go look up the game, Let's Play, find Rad Brad, and he'll give me a good idea what this game's going to be.
Oh, yeah. And so it's funny, too, that, I'm mentioning him with The Walking Dead. That video, the series he did on the Walking Dead games was actually the first series of his I ever watched way back when.
That's so good.
And then from then on, it was the same thing for me. I felt like, when I wanted to watch somebody play a game, but I didn't want them to talk over the entire thing, he's perfect for it. He stops talking over all of the cutscenes so you can actually listen, and that's another point with these games too, and why I've been loving them so much. It's because they're such great nostalgia,
Yep. I have to, before we get too far bit past it, I have to give the shout out to SSOHPKC. Seamus was his name. He was my go-to Let's Player.
Really?
Yes. He did the Heavy Rain series of his was what first got me into his channel.
Interesting.
Such a good series of videos. Such a great Let's Play series. He's been on and off the platform for a couple years, just falling off and coming back and whatnot.
Yeah.
But shout out to Seamus. What a classic.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the Rad Brad was probably the main dude I watched for a long time. Because he always played. It also helps that back in those early days, it was all of the really good games coming out. So I feel like for a solid year and a half, maybe even more than that. I feel like every series he did was another game I was super invested in and wanted to watch.
That was the time, man. Back then, like it was 10 years ago at this point. Just being like, these guys got it made.
Oh yeah,
they just get to record themselves playing video games all day.
Yeah, we're gonna have an episode one of these days where we go back to our childhood homes
with Rad Brad.
Yeah, with Rad Brad. He comes to both of our childhood homes. No, we're gonna do an episode one of these days where we go back to our childhood homes and live in 2011.
Yeah. Oh my god. No. Wow, that would be something.
That would be something.
2011. I am, 15. 2011, you are...
young.
8?
8, 9,
God.
Around there, yeah.
I am decaying.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's, yeah, what a time. Isn't it nuts to think how fast everything's moved? I went from playing Lego Star Wars on the GameCube to playing Blade and Sorcery VR, where I'd cut off a dude's head and then beat another dude with it.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
You came up in the time right when VR hit, though, is the thing.
Oh, yeah, kind of, yeah. To a certain degree. I was, like, probably mid-high school when I actually got a VR headset.
Mm-hmm.
But... yeah, I still feel like I missed out on some stuff, though, with VR. It was because by the time I got one, PlayStation VR was already a pretty old, dated concept of VR.
Right.
And that's why I bought a second VR headset and got an Oculus Quest, because it was modern and the tracking didn't suck.
Yeah.
But,
so can I, before we wrap this up, actually, let's say, do you have any more we'd like to say about the Walking Dead game?
Yeah, I don't think I need to. If you haven't seen this game,
no kidding,
you got to play it.
Yeah. So before we wrap it up, I want to tell my favorite VR story, and I feel like I've told this a lot lately. But my first time playing VR was at your house.
Was this in the simulator?
Yes, merely feet from where we are now, if you think about it.
Yep. Oh wow! Yeah, it was at that house.
Yes.
Wow.
So I put on, I think it was the PlayStation 1, right?
Yep.
And jumped into Job Simulator. And, it was a good time. I'm doing different jobs, doing everything you do in that game where you run the copy thing and you spill the coffee in someone else's cubicle. And I launch the convenience store one. And I worked in convenience stores, Caleb.
Oh yeah.
I was an Annie's boy in my day.
Oh yeah.
Worked there twice. And so, I'm settled in. I'm in my zone in the convenience store one.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm serving customers, and there's a break. There's a lull in the action. And there's a counter in front of me. So I'm like, all right, sweet. I'm not a great employee. Because I'm like, I could clean the grill.
Yeah.
Or I could be wiping down some machines, and there's no customers here.
Why bother?
No, I go to lean on the counter. Physically, I don't fall or anything. Like I don't eat shit.
No,
I did have to be reminded that the counter was not actually there, but I was just going what? And very funny.
It's hilarious how many people do that kind of thing in VR. I mean, I'm sure I did too. But like actually, you know what still happens to me? I have a really hard time playing games where playing a game where you stand up and move. And not necessarily like, just stand up and move. I can play Skyrim VR fine. The kind of stuff that gets me is specifically, to name a game, Spider-Man VR. The little free Spider-Man VR things they had. When you swing on a web in that, it's so fun. You have this sense of like gliding through the air, but then when you slam face first into a building, your VR body stops. And your real body doesn't know how to process it at first.
Yeah, your inner ear is fucked up.
You hit the building and your whole body does this fucking wobble where you're trying to like keep your balance and keep yourself upright, but it does not feel good.
Yeah, that's the thing with those games is like they can really mess with your inner ear and like make you sick. I definitely remember getting sick even in just like the Job Simulator because it was like the movement was not registering with my body.
Yeah.
Have you seen the videos of the dads like playing VR football and
No, I haven't.
I'll show you some after. And if you're listening to this, just look up like VR football dads on YouTube. It's so funny. These guys like they hike the ball, and then they're acting like a quarterback, like right back in their glory days, and then they're getting rushed. So, and this might just be one specific video, but in this video, I'm thinking of the guy goes. He goes to run away and try to escape and like get yards by running.
Yeah,
and he just slams right into a wall.
Oh
it's
man, that's
so
good.
Look it up, people. It's so good.
Yeah,
VR fails is just it's the most simplistic genre that I just love.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a good point though. Yeah, any kind of like movement in VR, and this is what I was gonna say too. I stand by the fact that I stand by my opinion of for most people that not everyone. I know there's boundless reasons why you can get VR sickness, but I think for a lot of the people that I've tried to get into VR that have just they just feel sick and can't play. I strongly feel like there is a learning curve to getting used to VR, and I feel like a lot of my friends that I've tried to get into it, I just don't think they have the patience to get that sick feeling a lot and power through it. But I used to feel sick every single time I played VR, I mean probably for a solid like month and a half. And after that, it just started going away, and now I can play VR and. You can put me in a spinning bucket in VR, and I just don't get sick that easy anymore. But yeah, there's definitely a learning curve of having all these visuals around you, and like it's hard to process both in your head and like while you're in VR. It's hard for me even sometimes to like. Keep my balance when I'm doing certain things and stuff. But yeah, when you get past it, it's great. I highly recommend VR to anybody.
Yeah, so good. And if you've been injured by a VR fail of your own, call us. We'll represent you in court.
And then we'll call Wendy's.
Of course.
And they'll send somebody to represent you.
That's what's going to happen.
That is what's going to happen.
Caleb, in person, I feel like we've made a real nice episode here. I'm happy with what we've done.
We've made a nice episode, and we've made a connection as humans.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I feel a lot closer to you, Greg. And it's not just because we're touching noses right now.
It does help, though.
It does.
It does help.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
What a good time. So, to everybody listening, if you want to share us, pass us along to your friends, get the word out there. Tell people that, hey. We're just two young boys, two supple boys.
Making some meatballs.
Making some sweet meatballs in the back of our dad's kitchen. And we just wanna get our game views out to people. We want you specifically. We want you to take take something away from this podcast. I don't care if you take away the fact that we're somehow connected to Wendy's corporate, and we won't tell you how.
We will not tell you.
Or if you want to take away the fact that hey, we talked about some cool games, and maybe you discovered a game you want to play. If you did, pass us along to a friend. Give us a little share.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, doesn't hurt. Hit that follow button. Hit that subscribe button. Click the little thumbs up.
Leave a review.
But do it on like a 5-star basis, because if I'm not here to look at reviews where you're rating us out of 100. There's so many numbers.
Too many.
Give us an out of 5 review.
Yep.
Print it. Don't print it. Fax it.
Mail it to us.
Fax it. No, let's fax it. Let's fax it.
Okay, a slightly newer, still out of date technology.
Yeah, fax it to Wendy's corporate.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Caleb, it's been a pleasure.
It has been, Greg. It's been a pleasure.
I'll speak to you next week.
I'll speak to you next week, and I'll speak to all of you people next week too.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.